Everything you need is already inside of you. The world would not be what it is without you. When we begin to create change within us, we begin to create change in the world around us. Your journey to becoming your best self as the whole person starts right now. Hi everyone, welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast. I'm your host, Lena. It is such an honor and I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. This podcast is here for you to help you on your journey to becoming your best self. It's a continuous journey and one that we have to take every single day. Through speaking with experts, authors, and amazing people from around the world, we are here to share a message with you. We bring you empowerment, inspiration, and strategies that you can instantly implement in your everyday life in all aspects of your life. See, that's the point here of Rise Up For You. Our focus is to work and help develop the whole human being. So we focus on relationships, money, self-worth, career, love, and health and fitness. The happiest people in the world, the happiest countries in the world take the time to nurture those 6 pillars. Before we jump into our episode today, for those of you that are in California, I do want to let you know that we have our first event of 2019 here in Southern California, in Irvine specifically. So those of you that are local or that are nearby or in town, head over to riseupforyou.com, check out that event. We are going to be focusing on how to get financially fit in this new year of 2019. We have 2 incredible speakers that are going to be talking with you about money, financial freedom, credit versus debt, and ways that you can get to the next level financially and in the money pillar. So back to our episode. Today we're going to be speaking with Paula Grooms. I'm going to let her tell you about herself, but I just want to preface and let you know that this episode was so incredible and so juicy, I guess is the right word, that I asked her to come back to do a part 2. So we actually have 2 episodes by Paula Groom, and here is the first one. Rise Up For You and enjoy this episode. Paula, thank you so much for joining us today here on the Rise Up For You podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you, speaking to such an amazing and accomplished woman.
Oh, thank you.
Spreading a message of empowerment, yes,
thank
for women
you so
in
much.
all aspects of their complex lives. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. I always like to start off the episode by letting our audience get to know our guest. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and all the great work that you're doing now so that our audience can get to know you.
Sure. Well, now I'm a dating and relationship coach. I'm a licensed social worker and author of the book, Why Won't He Commit? How a Man Decides to Make You the One.
Oh, okay. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Right.
Yeah, I know. So tell us a little bit how this journey, we always like to talk about the journey and ask how you got into the field that you're in, and, what sparked the interest in the love world and talking about relationships and how men are attracted to women.
Right. Well, it's funny because, excuse me, it's not like I had an aha moment. It's more like a flood of all my years, certainly personally with men and then professionally, kind of coming together in a way for which I have no explanation other than it was divine intervention for the strategies and theories that I created in my book that women on the reviews are saying are mind-blowing for them. So it's just very exciting that I feel like I am I'm the conduit or portal for women to kind of get things that are so confusing with men in a way that brings it really into a place where they can relate to how differently a man feels in a relationship than a woman feels.
So there wasn't any specific time or moment that had you go into that feeling of love and men and women? Just kind of happened naturally for you?
Yeah, it really did. And probably, as I say in my book, I've had all manner of experiences as a single woman, a married woman, everything in between. If you know the old series Sex and the City, there's every single man probably on there, I've had some kind of experience with, and so probably certainly personally, that's how that occurred. And then professionally, being in, I'm a licensed social worker, so I have done a lot of, certainly supportive counseling around people's relationships. So via my work, that also kind of came into play. So it all kind of came together.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, I'm really excited to talk with you today because I think that this is something that we as women talk about a lot, if we're still single, how do we find a man that's willing to commit? I can't find anybody that's willing to stay, or, they just jump ship. So I know you have this great topic where you talk about, how we can figure out when a man is ready, how we could figure out when he is, willing to settle down. So I'd really just love to hand over the wand to you and talk to us a little bit. And then from there, I can kind of ask a couple questions as a single woman myself.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Yes, I have to say my consumer versus buyer relationship theory resonates for so many women who are out there dating and or in a relationship with someone who they feel is just they're not getting to that commitment they'd like. And this is the crux and part and parcel of the differences between the way men and women love, commit, and bond. And it's very, very different for women than it is for men. For example, when a woman loves, she spends time with a man and has a physical relationship with him, she is bonded. That's just a natural normal thing that happens for most women. And again, I always make the caveat that in these discussions, I'm speaking about women in gross generalizations.
Right.
I'm speaking about men and women because we're all on a spectrum of experiences and having both male and female qualities.
Right.
So what I mean by the differences is that one of my main premises in my book is that women love through knowing and men love through wondering. And this is a very, very important thing for women to understand. It is why they feel that their men distance or that they need to pursue in order to feel love. And this is the case because they must be wondering to be in an act of loving. And that can be all manner of very significant ways or very small and seemingly insignificant ways. For example, as simple and as insignificant as it seems, just waiting for a woman's response in a text. That can leave him wondering why she isn't responding quickly, what she's doing, where she is. All these things of wondering make a man fall in love and stay in love.
At what point does that kind of diffuse, though? I mean, when the ring is on the finger, does it ever go away, or?
Well, this is the thing, I call it being the mechanic of a relationship. And what I mean by that is that if we take a car and make it the metaphorical relationship, women just want to get into a car. It looks good. It runs well. It's comfortable. We turn the key. We drive it, and all we need to do is put gas in it and check the oil every 3,000 miles. But for the most part, we just don't even care how it runs. We just need it to. And for a man, he likes to get under the car, a real car, and he likes to figure out how it works. It's enjoyable to him to know about different engines and how the fuel injector goes into the engine and so on and so forth. And if they could, they'll get under the car and get all greasy and cold on the cement floor to figure out how it works. And that's enjoyable to them. If we as women had to go out there on the cold cement floor and get all greasy and spend hours with him underneath that car, with him showing us how it works, we would hate it. We would then begin to hate the car. And this is how men are with relationships. They just want to get in a car that looks good, runs well, is comfortable, and just put gas in it and change the oil of the relationship every 3,000 miles, so to speak. But they don't want to know how it works. They don't want to get in there and pull it apart and look under the hood of the relationship and talk about it for hours and figure out the issues and to make it work. If that happens, they start to hate the car. They don't hate the woman. They don't dislike the woman. They start to dislike being in a relationship. And so it's up to us to be the mechanic, just like we take the car into a mechanic and we don't need to know how it works. We just say, fix it. He tells us what's wrong in a brief sentence, and we fix it. Then we just fix it. And we need to do that for the men. We cannot be in the discussion of it. We need to be the mechanic and know how to navigate those things with him in a way that doesn't make him feel like he's put under the metaphorical car figuring out how the relationship works.
So, you talk a lot about commitment, and you talk about you have these 5 tips that you talk about. One of them being that, as a woman, we view commitment as a natural, growth of love, and men, they see it as a responsibility. So how do we navigate through that?
Yes, because when we fall in love, right, we are just committed. They are not. So they can love us. And here we get into the consumer versus buyer relationship. And what I mean by that is men live in 2 states of being. They are either a consumer or a buyer. Goes back to that old adage. I don't know if you're old enough to know this adage, but it's an old one. And it is, women marry when they meet the right man. Men marry when it's the right time. And what that means is a man must be in a state of being ready, willing, and able to commit according to a set of criteria that I outline in the book. And that set of criteria is being a buyer. And so things, for example, he must be in a state in his career where he is financially able to take on the responsibility, of a relationship, because he sees commitment as a responsibility that he must take on. And once he does take that on, it's statistically not very probable that he will be the one to let the relationship go. 80% of divorces are brought to the courts by women.
Say that one more time. 80% of relationships are what?
80% of divorces are brought to the courts by women. This means women are the ones who generally want out of a relationship in terms of marriage. And that is because men, I put it very simply, so women kind of get it, men don't leave their team. And what I mean by that is that it's called my 4th supposition. That when a man joins a team, and he gets his mitts and he gets his jersey and the coach has taken him on and he's become part of the team, he doesn't just leave it because he doesn't feel like going to the practice or playing, or he just no longer feels like it. He would be a negative word for a female body part if he did that. And so good men don't leave their team. And when a man takes on a responsibility, whether it's to a team and his teammates or to a wife and the family, he generally, statistically, does not walk out on that team just because he feels like it. He may cheat, and that's another whole topic, what I get into in the book, about why that men can cheat in a marriage, but they don't leave it. It's normally the wife that says, hey, you're cheating or you're emotionally checked out, so I want out.
That's very interesting. I definitely thought that it would have been the other way around, that just in my personal experience, I've known it to be the opposite, just with people that are around me and what I've seen, that it feels like usually the man is the one that's ready to leave, or that they found interest somewhere else.
Well, that's the case, is that normally they've gone and strayed, and that's when the wife steps in and says, and so the marriage is dissolved, because normally the wife will not stay with a man who's cheated. But when we understand the reason why they have cheated, and it's generally because we need to be that mechanic. Because remember I said about if we are not the mechanic of the relationship, and the man has to get under the car with us all the time and figure it out and work on it in a way that makes him feel not very capable or not pleasing us or something like that, he will want to get a new car rather than work on the old car because it's too much work. Just like we will opt out when a car keeps breaking down for us. We don't know what's wrong with it. We just want to get out and get a new one.
So this is a really great question, or a great point. But so then how do we fix the car without, chasing it away?
Right. And that's what I work on in my coaching programs. Because it's not like we get married, and that's a very difficult thing even in itself, getting a relationship to the point of marriage, yet men do best in marriage because they've decided to take on a responsibility of commitment. And here's another of my gender gaps for you, is that women live by their feelings, men live by their decisions. And so it is very important that the man decides he's going to take on the responsibility of commitment, because then he will live up to it. For men, from the time they're children, their whole being as a male is attached to one main thing, and that is not being female. That's what they're about in their psyches. It's always about not being a woman, not being a girl, not being a negative word for a girl. It's in our society that's put into them, but it also comes from a biological thing for them that is in them. Just like our biology attaches us to men when we've had sex with them.
Right.
Just a natural, normal thing to occur.
Wow.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. It's just so interesting. It's really interesting. Paula, thanks for joining us today. It's really been, I could have you back on, and I would like to have you back on so we could do a little bit more of a deep dive. But right now I'd love to jump into the power section of the interview and ask you, what's one book that you've read that's had a massive impact on your life that you would recommend to us?
Well, I think because, there's just so many, my goodness, but for me, because it kind of changed my life and set me on a course of what I'm doing, and certainly my own personal relationships with men, and set me on the right courses, that would be The Rules, or Not Your Mother's Rules, by Ellen Fine and Sherry Schneider. And I'm a coach for them, a rules coach, and they also wrote the foreword to my book.
I love that. And what we always like to ask here, what is one non-negotiable in your life? So basically one value that you constantly stick by.
That is, In thinking about that, it's such a great question. I think everybody needs to answer that for themselves. For mine, it's respect. And anyone in my life, particularly men, need to show respect constantly. And that is just a non-negotiable.
And we always like to ask that if you could leave the world with one final message, we call it our golden nugget. What would your golden nugget be?
For me, I guess it would be leaving women with the understanding of how men love, how they commit, and how they bond. And that's, we didn't get into one of the main principles in my book that explains that, and maybe next time we can talk about that, because with that, women can really get what they want in a personal love relationship.
Okay, we'll definitely have to, we're going to have to do a part 2 of this sooner than later, because I would love to dive into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I always like to ask, when you hear the phrase rise up for you, what initially comes to your mind?
I think it is to the rise up for me, in my space, that is really, you've got to create the skills in a male-female relationship of being the mechanic of the relationship. And that is multifaceted. It's certainly easy once you get the strategies necessary for it. And it's easier than you think once you create that car that needs to be running and then become the mechanic so your car runs for a lifetime.
And thank you again so much for joining us, Paula. It's really been an honor, and I'm excited to have you back so we could do a little bit more of a dive. How do we stay connected to you right now? How do we support you, learn more about your book?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I'm Coach Paula Grooms on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm at CoachPaulaGrooms.com, and I'm also at WhyWon'tHeCommit.com, which my book is on all platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any bookseller. Why Won't He Commit? How a Man Decides to Make You the One. And you can learn more about me there and also get to me through those platforms.
Beautiful. Paula, again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to speak with you and do part 2.
Yeah, me too. Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rise Up For You podcast series. We're here to serve you and inspire you to become your best self so that you can live a life that you are proud of. If you haven't already, head over to our website, riseupforyou.com, and explore through all that we have to offer. Don't forget to subscribe while you're there for exclusive materials sent to you weekly, and also subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and any other major podcast channel. Join us for our next episode, but until we meet again, rise up for you, be better today than yesterday, and prepare for a greater you tomorrow. Everything you need is already inside of you. The world would not be what it is without you. When we begin to create change within us, we begin to create change in the world around us. Your journey to becoming your best self as the whole person starts right now. Hi everyone, welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast. I'm your host, Lena. Such an honor to be here and share the space with you guys today. I'm really excited about today's podcast. We're actually going to be doing part 2 with Paula Groom. If you missed the last episode, you're definitely going to want to go back and take a listen because it's a great episode that talks about why he won't commit. And obviously we're talking about relationships here and why the man in your life or the men that you've had in your life have decided not to commit to you. Something that we all think about, that we all struggle about. Before we jump into our episode, I want to remind you guys that we are here for you to help you become your best self. Our focus is the whole person, and we want nothing more than to help you become your best self in relationships, money, self-worth, career, love, and health. The whole human being. When we feel great within us as the whole person, then and only then can we create positive change around us. And think about it, when we feel down or when we feel really excited, it's usually in one of these 6 areas. Either we're really excited about our work, we're excited about money, or we're feeling down about our health, we're feeling down about our friends and our relationships, maybe we're feeling down about our love life. Whatever it is, our topic of conversation usually revolves around these 6 pillars. And when one is down, they're all down. So today in our society, the best thing we can do for ourselves is really try to nurture each one of those areas so that we can be a thriving person and build a thriving world for ourselves. Rise up for you and enjoy part 2 of this episode with Paula Groom. Paula, thank you so much for joining us again here on the Rise Up For You podcast. This is part 2 with Paula. So if you haven't heard episode 1, please head back and join us there. But Paula, for those of us that have not heard part 1, tell us a little bit about yourself in short, and then we'll jump in and continue the conversation.
Sounds good. Hi, Netta. Well, I'm a dating and relationship coach, as well as a licensed social worker. And I recently authored a book entitled, Why Won't He Commit? How a Man Decides to Make You the One. It's published in both paperback, it's on Kindle Nook, it's available in all major booksellers. I'm very excited about that publishing. And how did I get into this? It's a very interesting kind of journey, but yet there's no one big like aha moment or what have you that had me get into it. It's really a combination of both my education as a social worker, my training, my practice, and then of course a lot of life experience. So it's kind of evolved over a lifetime of nearly 20 years of working with clients, and then certainly my own personal journey as well as friends, family, in relationships and so forth. So that's how I came to be here today.
So we talked a lot on the last episode on, really just what are the first steps? What can we do? Where should we start here, Paula? Where should we jump in? Because there's a lot that we could talk about. And obviously this is a topic that many people or many women, are curious about. Why won't he commit? And how a man decides to make you the one. And I know you've mentioned that for guys, it's specifically about timing as well, too, right? You could be like the perfect person. Let's start there. You could be the perfect woman, but if it doesn't feel like the timing is right for him, it just won't click.
That's right. Because while women live via their emotions, men live via their decisions. And I liken it back to when a man is not in a proper place, time, etc., to commit, he is what I call a consumer and not a buyer. So, and a woman can take a test at any time during her relationship with someone to discover where he is on the scale of being ready, willing, and able to commit according to his timeline, his behaviors, how he is with a woman will allow her to see where he is on that scale. Because if he's not in the place of being a buyer, no matter if you're the right person or not, and or he loves you, he will not commit, because love alone for a man does not predicate him committing. It is not based on love alone. Where for women, it's a large part, I would say 90% of a woman committing is through love and her feelings about a man. And I can go more into the why of that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like to go into the why, and then I'd also like to follow up with a question that many women are probably thinking, that is, well, what if the man says that he does want to commit and he is ready and he's financially stable and he's got his life together and yet he still doesn't? What's holding him back from committing? So let's finish with you going into the why, and then let's lead into that question, because I think that's one that many women would like to hear about as well.
Okay, so the why of it is very simple, and I liken it back, and you can read about this in my book. I liken it back to something that most women have experienced themselves, because in order to understand men, we have to put ourselves in their mind, heart, space, brain, etc., to really understand it. And the easiest way is through what I call the puppy principle. And what that is that we as women love, for the most part, and for some women it's not puppies, but could be kittens or babies, what have you. But we love and have a feeling about puppies, even when we see them, just looking at them. But being around them gives us a feeling. And we, relate to them in a way that we're just drawn to them, all of them. Big, small, short, tall, thin, not thin, whatever. We just love them all. And that's how men feel about us. So here's the thing about them committing. That in order to commit for us to a puppy, in order to adopt a puppy, we might love them all. We might have one in our lives that we absolutely love. But if we're not in the proper space in terms and time, in terms of adopting them, we will not. What I mean by that is we must have our finances in order. We must be ready to take on the responsibility we see adoption as being. And we must have the right place for the puppy to stay. We must be in the mindset of, okay, for the rest of my days and for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be a puppy owner and I'm going to commit to that. It's a decision that we make through love, but the love does not trump the decision. And this is how men see us, because they love us all and they can love one particular puppy so much. However, if they're not in the right framework in terms of them, because while the woman might be seeing, and this goes to the second part of your question, she might be seeing it that, he's achieved, he has all his ducks in a row, we've got a great place to live, he's all set, but he's still not committing. So what's going on there? Correct? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is that the question?
Yeah.
What's going on there could be many things. For example, it could be that you're not the puppy, despite loving you. And here's a quick example of that. When I was on sabbatical for a while, I lived in my sister's guest house in Arizona. I'm a New York City gal, and my home in New York City is a tiny studio apartment on the 5th floor that I walk up. So when I was staying in my sister's guest house, she had a beautiful golden retriever named Bentley that I absolutely loved. And we joked that he was my boyfriend, because every night she would let him out of her house. He would come to my porch, sit on my porch. And then when I would let him in, he'd jump in bed and sleep with me all night. And this went on for a year. So we were inseparable when he was, and I loved him completely. And I was moving back to New York after the year. If my sister had said, Paula, you love Bentley so much, why don't you take him back to New York? We have our other doggy. Go ahead and take him. I would say at that point, because I was going back to New York, to a small, tiny apartment, New York City, 5th floor walk up. I didn't know where my next step after my sabbatical would be in terms of my job. I would have said, no matter how much I love Bentley, I cannot take him on. I cannot adopt him, even though I love him dearly, and I've slept with him every night for a year. However, if Bentley, instead of a golden retriever, had been a teeny tiny chihuahua, I may have taken him on and thought differently, because he was the right puppy that fit into my life in the right way, because I could carry him up the stairs. He could go on the wee pad in my apartment, and it would be a whole different ballgame. So sometimes, despite loving you, which you'll feel from the man, just as I loved Bentley completely, you will feel that love, but for some reason you are just not the right puppy for him, and he will never, almost never, I should say, discuss that with you. because it's too painful for him to do. Because men at their core, good men at their core, are designed for and socialized into, we do not hurt women. And the cruel to be kind thing for men is not normally part of their beings, and they will never open up to you about that. They very rarely will say, you're just not the one. They will just act on that you're not being the one, and how they act on it is in very different ways. They'll continue to stay with you as a consumer with no thought of committing because they love you and want to be with you. Just like I would have stayed with Bentley forever and he would have been my puppy, but I never would have adopted him as long as it worked for me. As soon as it no longer did, which it didn't when I moved to New York, I would have left him. And that's what I did. So does that kind of explain it?
It does, but I guess my question is, how can we ever know then? Because it almost sounds like sometimes we're at the mercy of the man. Like we could be in a relationship for 2 years and he might be thinking that we're not the one and we don't know. So how do we navigate through that as women?
Excellent question. And that's where, for example, it's where my coaching comes into play, because it is very difficult to navigate that on your own and decipher the man's actions, because he will not relate to you via verbalization. Women relate via verbalization, men relate via action. So you're absolutely right to a great extent. And that's the harsh reality of being a woman, because you will not know. Here's the other most important thing. Time by itself never turns a consumer into a buyer. So when we'll say, well, wait a minute, I know a friend of a friend who, after 10 years, he committed, right? She's been with him for 10 years, off and on, they've broken up, blah, 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 he committed. It is simply, it wasn't time, it was that he came to the decision, given the timing in his life. In other words, using my analogy, I moved back to Arizona, there's beautiful Bentley, okay, I'll adopt him. It is simply that black and white and simple for men, because they can love us all in one way, shape, or form. They have to decide to take on the responsibility that they see commitment as being. And it's as simple as that. A woman will not know. And so you have to predicate your life on you and deciding, okay, am I willing to wait? It's why because many men will not do it on a woman's timeline, and a woman has more of a timeline. One of my biggest things that I promote for women is do not waste your valuable time. Because what happens is women believe that men will commit via their feelings, and they will not. It's why it's so confusing. I know he loves me. Why is he not committing? That we have to put the time limit for ourselves and then do what I call my leave him to lure him strategy, which if he's ever going to commit, that's the strategy that will work to allow him to say, uh-oh, I've got to commit, or I'm going to lose the puppy of my life.
Very interesting. So what are some things, and this is a big question, but what are some things that guys use to determine whether or not they want to commit?
Well, again, it's not as much about, there are some things about the woman. Using the example that I gave, if Bentley were a teeny tiny Chihuahua, I would likely have adopted him. So it's partly that. However, my love for Bentley was just as great as it is for any Chihuahua. It is that I would have needed to be in a different space and time in my life, meaning I need to take on, again, it just goes back to take on the responsibility I see pet ownership as being. And so a good man is much less likely to just jump into a commitment than a not so good man who's kind of all over the place. And that's what's kind of maddening for women, because the best of men take commitment very seriously. And we want them to, because it's a responsibility that they see commitment as being. So I'm not sure I'm getting to your question, but what women can do is direct their lives according to them and their needs, rather than the man and going just by the man and his needs. In other words, when you decide, I can't waste any more time with this, right? And that's why my consumer versus buyer relationship test at whywon'thecommit.com is so important for a woman to take, to know really where he is, because her feelings are going to make her believe that he's at a different place. And he'll want to please her by saying things that he wants eventually to do. He may want to eventually commit, and he may be talking about marriage or children or what they'll do in the future. But that doesn't mean he's in a place of making a commitment. And the reason I'm such a proponent of a formal commitment is that while men love all women, mostly all the time, there is only one thing that will bond a man to a woman, and that is taking her on as the responsibility he sees commitment as being. That means he must make a decision to do that. And because men are all about their decisions, and they believe that living up to them makes them a man, it is why it is so important for him to bond, to make a formal commitment. And this is why in our society, we have that adage of do not date a married man. And why is that? Because we know a married man will not leave his wife, even if he loves someone else more. Because a man lives by his decisions, and I say in my book, and you may read this, it's the last chapter of my book, that it's about 5 little words. And what that is men don't leave their team. When they commit to a team, whether it's a losing team or a winning team, they're committed for life. They don't change their team. And they don't change it just because they feel negatively about the team. And it is the same in marriage. They don't just opt out because they feel like it. Now, there are always eclipses. And 3% of married men who have affairs will leave their wives for the woman with whom they're having the affair. 3%. It is not a percentage where we want to take a chance. And it is why we know, as women, do not get involved with a married man, because no matter how much love he has for you, he will not leave his wife for you, because he will not leave his team.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, okay, I have another question here. Let me see if I could formulate it correctly. There's a lot of talk about the 3 different elements that come with men and women. So the emotional connection, the mental connection, and then the physical connection. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? And do men rank some higher than others? And what does that look like from a man's perspective?
That's a good question. And and this is what I work with mostly with women who are actually doing online dating, because I have a program specifically for online dating, and the principles go over to dating in general. Here's the thing that is both a good and bad thing about men, but for women it can be, again, a maddening, almost disappointing thing, because men's brains are linear, meaning they're wired more front to back. They don't have as big of a hippocampus as women do. So parts of their brains don't speak to other parts of their brains. And what this does, in effect, is allow them to make black and white decisions about women that is pretty biological. And it's very hardwired into men. So from the beginning, in terms of dating, you must set yourself in his eyes as a woman to marry and not a woman to have fun with. because men place women into two categories. And this is the old Freud's Madonna whore complex, if you know of it. And it's very interesting because it really plays out, and you see this. While a man will consume the time and attention of any pretty puppy who's willing to give it, he will only take on the responsibility of a wife and choose the wife if he sees her as being wife material, and she fits into the first category of woman, which is a woman you marry, a woman who can be the mother of your children. And a woman must set herself on that path from the very first interaction. So this is most critical for him in terms of long-term commitment. And that, going back to your question, it's not the physical, it's not the mental, it's not the emotional on its own, meaning one doesn't have more weight than the other in terms of a buyer. In other words, it must be all three to one extent or the other. For a consumer, it can be 95% physical. For a consumer, it can be 95% emotional. For a consumer, it can be 95% any one or the other, because he is just getting his needs met in that moment with no thought of making you the one.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Wow. Paula, thank you so much for joining us again for part
Absolutely.
2. I would love to. We did jump into the power section last time, right? Well, let's do it again. And do you have any changes? So we do have. I know we talked about the book, and one book that's made a massive impact. And I'll go ahead and just say that Paula has written a book called Why Won't He Commit? How a Man Decides to Make You the One. And you can get it on Amazon. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that's where I saw it. I have the book here, which is great, and I'm diving into it. So if any of you guys are interested, you definitely want to check it out. And it's a short read. It's only about a maybe 2.5 hour read, 3 hour read, but it'll definitely, I think, answer some questions for a lot of women that are out there. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Thank you. It is on every major bookseller. You can go into any store and order it. It is a published book, and you can get it on any major bookseller in any store at all. I thank you for that, and glad you're diving into it. This is what women are saying to me, and if you see on Amazon the reviews, it's and this is profoundly fulfilling for me, because women are saying that it's blowing their mind in a way of allowing them to see, opening their eyes to things that they didn't get in a relatable way before. And it's made them know, first and foremost, that they are loved by men, and that they have to really take on the onus for a relationship and navigate it in a way that is going to be good for them, to not waste their valuable time, because that's so important to so many women, and especially in childbearing years, because a woman will stay committed to a man she loves without a formal commitment, and then he's not bonded. And that's a whole nother discussion about living together and all of those types of things, which are not formal commitments. So a man does not bond in the same way. It's so important to me for women to feel empowered through knowing that they have these choices, and that they can see good men in a good light, and just see that just because a man is in the state of being a consumer does not mean that A, he doesn't love you, and it does not mean B, that he's a bad man. He can love you a lot and be a great man, but it is going to predicate what you do with that, because you do not want to waste your valuable time.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Paula. Lastly, before we head out, I want to know, how do we stay connected to you, and how do we support you?
Oh, thank you. Well, yes, you just mentioned my book, and you can certainly connect with me there. Facebook, Instagram, all the Twitter, Tumblr. You can read more of my articles and so forth. YouTube, I'm there. It's CoachPaulagrooms.com. And all my videos, your podcast will be there. Everything that I've been doing so that women can hear me and see me and connect with me is all CoachPaulagrooms.com, or certainly whywon'thecommit.com.
Beautiful.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. It was great talking to you again, and I'm looking forward to both of these playing and connecting with your listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rise Up For You podcast series. We're here to serve you and inspire you to become your best self so that you can live a life that you are proud of. If you haven't already, head over to our website, riseupforyou.com, and explore through all that we have to offer. Don't forget to subscribe while you're there for exclusive materials sent to you weekly, and also subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and any other major podcast channel. Join us for our next episode, but until we meet again, rise up for you, be better today than yesterday, and prepare for a greater you tomorrow.